In today's lesson, we'll be learning how to move from patterns to algebra with a focus on table of values. Take a look at the table below. Figure 0 contains 1 block, Figure 1 contains 3 blocks, Figure 2 contains 5 blocks. But how many blocks are in Figure 3? Take a minute to think about this. If you had predicted Figure 3 to contain 7 blocks, you would have been correct. Some of you may have noticed a pattern within the figure number. They're increasing by 1. Meanwhile, some of you may have also noticed a pattern within the number of blocks. They're increasing by 2. The pattern that you just noticed is actually called the rate of change. A rate describes how one quantity changes. In this particular situation, this quantity is the number of blocks in relation to another quantity. And in this particular situation, this other quantity would have been the figure number. Linking this back to the pattern you just discovered, there is an increase of 2 blocks for every one figure. Therefore, the rate of change is an increase of 2 blocks for every one figure, and we'll be talking about the variable of y and x a little bit later. Take a look at the table below. Figure 1 contains 3 blocks, Figure 2 contains 5 blocks, and Figure 3 contains 7 blocks. But how many blocks does Figure 0 contain? Take a minute to think about this. If you had predicted Figure 0 to contain 1 block, you would have been correct. Many of you may have used the pattern we just discovered earlier to work backwards to find the number of blocks in Figure 0. What you just figured out, which was the number of blocks in Figure 0, is actually called the initial value. The initial value is the value of one quantity. In this particular situation, this would have been the number of blocks, when the other quantity has a value of 0. This quantity is the figure number. Linking this back to what we just discovered, there is 1 block in Figure 0. Therefore, 1 block is actually the initial value. And we'll be talking about these variables of y and x in just a minute. The pattern that you just noticed can also be represented with an equation. Y equals rate of change multiplied by x plus initial value. We already determined the rate of change to be an increase of 2 blocks for every one figure, which is the same thing as 2 over 1, which is the same thing as 2 divided by 1, which is the same thing as just 2. Therefore, the rate of change can be simplified to just 2. Moreover, we discovered the initial value to be 1 block. Therefore, we can put the number 1 as the initial value. As mentioned earlier, I said I would be discussing the meaning of the variable y and x. Y in this situation represents the number of blocks, and x in this particular situation represents the figure number. Therefore, this pattern can be represented with the equation y equals 2x plus 1.